All right, so if we're talking about, we're kind of going into parallel lines at this point right here. All right, and we know two lines are parallel if you see these little triangles like this on these lines. Okay, much the way that, and again, kind of going back to a couple of things here real quick. If I'm saying that, if I'm saying that this line right here is the same measurement as this line right here, then I would indicate that by saying that this line is congruent to this line. All right. If I had two pairs of lines that were congruent to each other, then I would indicate that as this is the second pair that are congruent to each other. It's just indicators that show that these two lines are congruent. What does congruent mean? The same. Okay. So the idea of congruent is that they are equal in measurement and similar in shape. Okay, so that's why we call it congruent. All right. Same way with angles. If I'm saying that angle 2 and angle 8 are congruent, this angle right here is going to be congruent to this angle right here. We'll make the reference with these two little, or this, a single curve. If I have two pairs of angles that are congruent to each other, so 2 is congruent to 8 and 1 is congruent to 7, then I will show that this angle right here is congruent to this angle right here. All right? So it's just kind of distinguishing in the actual image itself what your congruent parts are. Now, yesterday, um, that's gonna bother me. Okay, sorry. So yesterday we talked about a couple of different types of angles. All right. The first one was supplementary angles. So, does anybody know what supplementary angles are, or complementary angles are? Very good, very good. So supplementary angles are two angles that when you add them together, they're going to equal 180 degrees. Complementary, two angles that add together equal 90 degrees. Now, and this video will be out later today, but what does the word adjacent mean? These desks are adjacent to each other. What does that mean? They're next to each other. They're side by side. Okay? So if I go ahead and draw an angle like this, okay, are these two angles now side by side? Yes, they are side by side. Okay? And if I add the measure of this angle right here with the measure of this angle right here, what do they add to? 180 degrees. Okay, so that means that these two angles are supplementary to each other. Okay, but because they are side by side, okay, so these two angles are adjacent and supplementary, we call them a linear pair. Okay, that means these two angles together form a line. Okay, a line is actually an angle. All right, that is 180 degrees. Okay, so this is a linear pair. Um, so if I have now two lines that intersect each other, okay, I form vertical angles. All right, and vertical angles are angles that are opposite of each other. So I've created congruent angles here because angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. Okay, so these are vertical angles right here. Just kind of a little bit about what we did yesterday. All right, when we use this when we go into parallel lines. Okay, because here I have two parallel lines that are cut by a transversal. This is a transversal. Okay. When I do this, I create angle relationships that you're going to have to know the names of. The first one is going to be corresponding angles. Okay? And these are angles that are on the same side of the parallel line and the same side of the transversal. So 1 and 3 correspond. 2 and 4 correspond. 8 and 6 correspond, and 7 and 5 correspond. Okay, does everybody see that? All right? And corresponding angles are always congruent. So 1 is congruent to 3, 2 is congruent to 4, and so forth. All right? We're good with that? Okay. Well, don't start yarning on me. All right? All right. So if angle 11 is 51 degrees, you start yawning and call you for every question. Let's start with this one. What's 15? Who's that? Trina? 51. Very good. All right. Let's move on. So A is parallel to B. That's how we write it. Okay? In lines, yesterday we talked about perpendicular. Okay? So if A was perpendicular to B, if I have two lines that are perpendicular, what's unique about those lines? Anybody know? It's what now? So if is this line perpendicular to this line? No. After I did. No, I didn't. You can't sit there and do that. Like I say no and then you say no and you get credit for it. All right. So that was not perpendicular. Is that perpendicular? Yes. Why? Because. Ah, there you go. Good. Are you gonna say that now and take credit for it too? Okay. What'd she say? Okay. So I have two lines that intersect each other. That when they intersect each other, they form a 90-degree angle. Okay. So in this case, I would write that as A is perpendicular to B, two lines that intersect form a right angle. Okay. In this case, A is parallel to B. So these two lines right here are parallel. So I can go ahead and draw that little triangle if I want to. All right, just to make sure that I know that these two are parallel to each other. All right, so if they're parallel to each other, Maddie, if 18 is 42, what's 22? If angle 18 is 42 degrees, what is the measure of angle 22? 42. Okay? Because again, these two right here are corresponding angles. All right. So again, I have two parallel lines, and I have my angle relationships. Okay? So far, when we talk about terminology, you're going to have to be able to know how to use the word linear pair, vertical angles, perpendicular angles, perpendicular lines, corresponding angles, and then now we get into alternate interior angles. So if I have two parallel lines, I have an interior region and I have an exterior region. Okay? All right, this is my interior region. All right, so my alternate interior angles. If I have two parallel lines that are cut by a transversal, then on the interior of this, if they alternate the transversal, okay, then those two angles are congruent. So 1 and 3 are alternate interior angles. What's another pair of alternate interior angles? 4 and 2. Okay? All right, so 1 and 3, 2 and 4, alternate interior angles. They are always congruent if these lines are parallel. All right? Consecutive. What does the word consecutive mean? Okay, over and over again, or one after the other. Okay? So consecutive interior angles. All right? Consecutive means they're one after the other. So they're on the same side of the transversal, and they're angles that come right after each other. So 1 and 2 are consecutive interior angles. 4 and 3 are consecutive interior angles. If they are consecutive interior angles, they are always supplementary if these two lines are parallel. All right? Next, we have alternate exterior angles. So again, let's just go ahead and create my exterior angles. So 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So these are my exterior angles. So the same thing happens. Okay? If they alternate the transversal and they're on the exterior of the parallel lines, these are alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior angles are congruent. So 5 and 8 are congruent. 6 and 7 are congruent. Okay? Consecutive exterior angles means that they're on the exterior of the parallel line, but they're one after the other. So this comes right before this. So 5 and 7 are consecutive exterior. 6 and 8 are consecutive exterior. Now here's the catch to this. Listen. Whether we're talking about alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, consecutive interior, consecutive exterior, if it begins with the word consecutive, okay, they are always, always, always supplementary. Okay? Consecutive is always supplementary. Everything else is congruent. Okay? So if I say vertical angle, what are they? Congruent. Okay? If they are corresponding, what are they? Congruent. If they're alternate interior, congruent. If they're consecutive interior, supplementary. Okay? If I say the word consecutive with that angle relationship, they are supplementary. Otherwise, they are congruent. Okay? What's the relationship between angle 2 and angle 3? If these two lines right here are parallel, what's the relationship between 2 and 3? So they're on the interior of these two parallel lines. Okay? And they alternate the transversal. This is the transversal. So they're alternate interior angles. And alternate interior angles are congruent or supplementary? Congruent. Very good. Then 5 and 7. What are they? You gonna say that now too? Okay. So, Tyra, how do I classify 5 and 7? What is the name of the relationship between 5 and 7? Corresponding. Thank you. Very fine. So, Tyra, corresponding angles are what? Congruent. Okay, so angle 5 is equal to angle 7. So if angle 5 is 2x minus 10, then that equals angle 7, which is x plus 15. When I subtract this x from both sides, we get x minus 10 equals 5. Add the 10, x equals 15. Okay? Good? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you. Let's see. So 15. So x would be 25. Okay. All right. We go with that? So let's just talk about this. We won't do the math part of it yet. All right. So how do I classify 4 and 8? No. No. Same side, consecutive exterior. The 4 and 8, consecutive exterior. And consecutive exterior angles are what? Supplementary. So this plus this is equal to 180 degrees. And that's how we would solve that. Okay? Outside of that, we are done. You have your assignment on CUDA. All right. Now,